I never thought living in a quiet suburban neighborhood would turn into something straight out of a TV drama. I had just moved into Willow Creek Estates, a place that promised peaceful living and friendly neighbors. But apparently, not everyone got the memo. From the moment I arrived, there was one person who seemed determined to make my life. Miserable Mrs. Karen Whitmore, the self-proclaimed HOA queen. Her reputation preceded her. Neighbors whispered about her. Confrontations and nitpicking, ways. But I didn't think I'd end up as her next target. It all started with small things. She would peer from behind her curtains, noting every little infraction, like leaving my trash cans out an extra hour of planting flowers, a shade she didn't approve of. I tried to be courteous, hiding my frustration behind polite nods and smiles, but soon it escalated into something more personal. One morning, I received an email from the HOA claiming I had violated some obscure rule about lawn decoration placement. I had followed every guideline, but Karen's fingerprints were all over the complaint. At first, I thought it was harmless exaggeration, but the tension grew when I noticed her taking photos of my house while I was away. I had begun working from home, but that day, I had an important client meeting across town and left early. When I returned, my mailbox contained another HOA notice, more severe than the last. This time, it accused me of multiple violations, citing pictures I had never seen before. My stomach sank. The accusations were fabricated, and I realized Karen had a vendetta. I tried talking to the HOA board, explaining calmly that the claims were false. They brushed me off, citing Karen's long-standing involvement and experience as a reason to trust her reports. Frustration bubbled inside me. I had always been someone who avoided confrontation, but this felt personal. Something had to be done before her obsession caused real damage. Then, the final straw came. I went out for groceries, expecting a simple errand. When I returned, police cars were parked outside my home, lights flashing. Officers were walking up to my front door. My heart raced. Apparently, Karen had gone to the extreme. She called the authorities claiming I had been involved in illegal activity while I was out. Her lies had spiraled into a full-blown accusation, and now I was staring at a situation I couldn't have imagined even in my wildest nightmares. The officers asked questions, and I provided my alibi, showing receipts and messages proving I had been elsewhere. It was humiliating, infuriating, and surreal all at once. Karen, standing across the street with her phone out, looked triumphant. That's when I realized that this wouldn't just be a neighborhood feud. It was something that would require legal intervention. And as it turned out, it wasn't just me who was about to face the fallout. The chaos that greeted me when I returned home didn't let up. Police officers were meticulously walking around my property, taking notes and snapping photographs. My neighbors had started gathering across the street, whispering and pointing, while I tried to stay calm. I kept repeating to myself that the truth would come out, but Karen clearly had other plans. She was standing a few houses down, phone in hand, recording everything as if she were documenting her victory. An officer finally approached me, clipboard in hand. "Ma'am, can you tell us about these allegations?" he asked, his tone polite but firm. I took a deep breath, recounting my whereabouts for the past few hours. I had receipts from the grocery store, timestamps on my phone, and even a message thread confirming I had been on a video call during the exact time she claimed something illegal was happening. I handed everything over, but the officer's expression didn't change. "You understand why we have to investigate, right?" he said. I nodded. Of course I understood, but it felt like they were giving Karen the benefit of the doubt over me. What truly stunned me was when he mentioned that Karen had called in multiple witnesses who supposedly saw suspicious activity. I could barely believe it. Karen had convinced a few gullible neighbors to back her story, and suddenly I was the one under scrutiny. Hours passed. The officers kept circling, asking questions, inspecting my house, and even checking my backyard. Meanwhile, Karen lingered just out of reach, occasionally waving at them and whispering to herself, a triumphant smirk on her face. I felt powerless, trapped in a situation I hadn't caused. The neighborhood that promised peace now felt hostile, and I couldn't understand how a personal grudge had escalated into this nightmare. Then, it happened. I was told by one of the officers that, due to the seriousness of Keran's claims, I was going to be taken in for questioning. My heart sank. "Taken in?" I asked, disbelief in my voice. "I didn't do anything." The officer explained that it was standard procedure whenever allegations of this type were made, and until the situation was cleared up, I would need to come to the station. As I was led to the squad car, I caught sight of Keran smiling. Not just smiling, but waving, as if she had orchestrated the entire scenario perfectly. I felt a mix of anger, humiliation, and disbelief. I realized, in that moment, that Keran's obsession with control over the neighborhood had gone beyond petty HOA rules. She had weaponized the system against me, and the repercussions were real. The ride to the station was tense and silent. I kept thinking about the injustice, the absurdity of the situation, and what I could possibly do to prove my innocence. At the station, I was fingerprinted and questioned, and the officers seemed to take my side slowly as they reviewed my alibi. But even with evidence, the entire ordeal was humiliating, and I knew that when I got out, nothing would feel the same. Keran had gone too far this time, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. After hours of questioning, the police finally released me. I walked out of the station exhausted, frustrated, and still fuming. My hands were sore from the constant paperwork, my nerves were frayed, and my mind was spinning with one thought. Keran had gone too far. I had always tried to be polite, to avoid conflict. But this wasn't a matter of manners anymore, it was a matter of justice. The humiliation of being falsely accused and arrested, even temporarily, was something I couldn't simply brush off. Back at my house, I began documenting everything. Receipts, timestamps, screenshots, even photos of my lawn decorations, all neatly organized into a file labeled Keran Evidence. I knew I needed a solid record in case the HOA or the authorities required proof. I also reached out to a lawyer, explaining the situation and providing all the evidence I had gathered. It was stressful, but finally I felt like I had some control over the situation. My lawyer immediately recognized the severity of Keran's actions and assured me we could pursue a harassment case if necessary. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was buzzing. Word of the incident had spread, and some neighbors approached me with sympathy, others with curiosity. A few admitted they had also experienced Keran's aggressive tendencies but had been too intimidated to speak up. Surprisingly, the attention gave me some confidence. I wasn't alone. Keran, however, didn't seem fazed. She continued her daily patrols, her gaze lingering on my property longer than ever, as if daring me to challenge her. Her obsession was obvious, and it became clear that simply living peacefully wasn't going to stop her. The HOA meetings became a battlefield. I attended one to address the false claims directly, armed with evidence and a calm but firm demeanor. Keran was there, acting innocent, but her smug smile gave her away. As I presented my proof detailing the fabricated complaints, the board members' expressions changed. They realized the extent of her manipulation, and murmurs of disapproval began to ripple through the room. For the first time, I felt a sense of vindication. Still, Keran didn't back down. She started posting messages to neighbors, subtly questioning my behavior and trying to rally support for her version of events. It became obvious that this wasn't just about rules or HOA regulations. It was a personal vendetta. I realized I couldn't simply wait for the situation to resolve itself. I needed to be proactive, not just for myself, but to protect anyone else who might become her target in the future. In that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't let fear or intimidation dictate my life. I would fight this, legally and publicly if necessary. Keran had underestimated me, assuming I would quietly endure her antics. But she had made a critical mistake. By crossing the line into false accusations and involving law enforcement, she had given me the leverage I needed. And now, the battle for the neighborhood's peace and my own reputation was just beginning. The weeks following the arrest were tense. Keran's subtle harassment didn't stop, but I had become more vigilant. I installed security cameras, kept meticulous records, and maintained communication with my lawyer. Every interaction, every HOA notice, every suspicious glance from Keran was documented. I realized that the best defense was preparation and proof, and I wasn't going to give her a single opening to manipulate the situation again. The tipping point came at another HOA meeting. I walked in armed with a binder filled with evidence, emails, photos, and statements from neighbors who had witnessed Keran's obsessive behavior. The room was crowded, the tension palpable. Keran arrived, clearly expecting to dominate the discussion as usual. She started with her rehearsed complaints, her voice sharp, her tone condescending. But I was ready. Calmly, I laid out my case. Each claim she had made was systematically disproven, backed by timestamps, receipts, and multiple witnesses. The room fell silent as I concluded my presentation. Board members exchanged glances, clearly realizing for the first time that Keran's vendetta had gone too far. Even some of her allies looked uncomfortable, unable to justify their previous support. Keran's confident demeanor faltered. The smirk that had haunted me for weeks disappeared. I could see her trying to formulate a response, but the weight of the evidence left her speechless. Finally, the HOA president spoke. After reviewing the evidence, it's clear that these accusations were unfounded. Moving forward, Keran's actions will be officially documented, and any further harassment will not be tolerated. I felt a wave of relief. Justice had been served, not through confrontation or retaliation, but through careful documentation and persistence. Keran left the room without another word, her reign of intimidation effectively over. In the days that followed, the neighborhood dynamic shifted. Neighbors who had been hesitant to speak up before began to feel more empowered. Some approached me privately, thanking me for standing up against Keran's manipulation. It was a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion. The ordeal had taken a toll, but it had also proven that persistence and preparation mattered. Looking back, I realized how dangerous unchecked power in small communities could be. One person's obsession could spiral into chaos, affecting multiple lives. But I had learned something important. Fear only has power if you allow it to. By documenting, staying calm, and seeking the proper legal channels, I had turned a nightmare into a lesson in resilience. Keran may have tried to ruin my life, but in the end, her attempts backfired. I emerged stronger, wiser, and with the satisfaction of knowing that truth and persistence could prevail even against the most relentless of HOA Karens. Life in Willow Creek Estates returned to a semblance of normalcy, but now I had a reputation of my own, not as a victim, but as someone who refused to be bullied, no matter how powerful her complaints seemed. Enjoying this wild HOA drama? Hit that subscribe button to catch more real-life neighborhood stories. Give this a like if you've ever dealt with a tricky neighbor and drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in my shoes?